We're going to spend about our next 30 minutes talking about exam strategy and just trying to figure out what to do. And what I usually do is this. I have 9 questions that I'm going to address because people always ask me these 9 questions. And then I'll have some time afterwards and we'll give you a chance to ask me some questions. I can't promise you that I know the answer to every one of them, but I'll do my best to answer it or find the answer for you. And I've heard a lot of questions, so maybe I'll know. To start off with, though, I'd like to ask you by a show of hands, how many people plan to take AANP's exam? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people plan to take ANCC's exam? All right. That is pretty much what I see across the country. Anecdotally, I would have to say 9 out of every 10 people, nurse practitioners finishing now, take AANP's exam. If you haven't made a decision yet, and even if you have, what I want you to do is go to AANP's website and ANCC's website where they talk about the certification exam. I want you to go to their blueprints and go see what's there. Generally, this is what you will find. AANP's exam is 100% clinically based, meaning every question on that exam is about some clinical issue. ANCC's exam is about 50% clinical and about 50% other things. Other things are things like theory or research, ethics, malpractice. So if you feel well endowed in that, then ANCC's exam might be the one you should take. It doesn't matter, I think, which one you take, because both exams allow you to practice to the full scope of your practice in all 50 states. Both exams confer board certification. So when an employer says, we only want a board-certified NP, AANP and ANCC both fulfill that. The reason they want someone to be board-certified is so that they can get reimbursed for your services, and they should. The other thing with both exams is that both of them allow you to be paid by insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid. So my advice to you is to go to both websites and go see. I don't see an advantage to being certified by one over the other. I see a huge advantage to being certified. And so I would encourage you to do that. So that's the first thing that I want to get out of the way because people always ask about that first. The next thing I want to make sure that you know about is that people always ask me, Amelie, when should I take the exam? I usually look at them and say, well, you only want to take this exam once. And so when you go in, I want you to be ready. Here is one of my recommendations for you. Before next week is over, what I would like to see you do is go through your syllabus. You remember yesterday morning I asked you to make a mark by all the material that you need to review some more of? I even suggested you put an exclamation point by it. I think you should go through your syllabus and look for that mark. I want you to make a list of everything that you need to study some more of. And then I want you to pull out your calendar. And I want you to look at your calendar and say, oh, next week, oh my God, I got a killer week next week. I can only do 3 things on my list. I would make those 3 things my goals for next week. Then I would look at the second week after this course. I would say, oh, thank goodness I got an easier week. I can do 14 things on my list. I would make those next 14 things my goals for that week. And I would march my way through my list until there was nothing left on my list. I would probably give myself another week or 2 weeks and I'd take my exam. I really would. One of the most dangerous things you can do is to say that you want to take this exam before Christmas. I want to take this exam before January 5th. I want to take this. You need to take this exam when you're ready. So I'd like to make sure that you can appreciate that fact. When people rush through preparation for their exam, they often don't have a good ending. And I want you to be successful on this exam. So take it when you're ready. There's something else I want to remind you of. If you are a student, I want you to appreciate that you have something going for you that you might not even realize. You have something that I call student momentum. You know what that means? That means you're in the habit and the practice of studying and absorbing new material. You probably have time set aside on certain days of the week or certain times where you study and you get things done. You need to take advantage of that. One of the worst things you can do is say, you know what? Look, I just need a break from school. I'm going to take 3 months off and then I'll take my exam 3 months later. You can do that and you can still be successful, but you probably will have lost a huge advantage that you have called student momentum. So when you're in the practice and the habit of studying and absorbing new material, I think you can use that to your advantage in your preparation. So I would encourage you not to delay too much. The magic question that people always ask me is, Amelie, how should I prepare? This is what I usually tell them. It is impossible, well, not impossible, but it's pretty darn unlikely that you'll make 100% on this exam. But your best effort at getting the best score is going to be to expose yourself to a lot of different information. The very first thing I would do is go through my syllabus. I would make sure that I was familiar with the concepts of diseases, the conditions, the normal things, the abnormal findings that you go through and you see in that syllabus. I would use it as my foundation, my base. After you feel like I know what's in this syllabus, I would begin to work multiple choice questions. Multiple choice questions will expose you to new diseases, to new conditions, to findings that maybe you haven't seen before. The most important part of multiple choice questions is really not whether you get it wrong or right. The most important thing about the multiple choice questions is the rationale. Make sure you focus on that rationale, because the rationale is going to grow and stretch your knowledge base. And that's what you got to be able to do. So focusing on questions and multiple choice questions after you feel comfortable with the material in the syllabus, I think will go a long way for you. So listen, my company has multiple choice questions, but other companies do too. I want you to get some of those multiple choice questions and begin to work through them. It also is going to help you focus on words that we talked about yesterday. Initially, what's the first thing you're going to do? When we talked about unilateral findings and unilateral conditions, when we talked about when they give you multiple things to do, what do you do first? You're looking for history. Look for your physical exam. Build your differential. Make your diagnosis. Start your treatment. So those questions are going to help you focus on that, and that's what you've got to be able to do. I really feel like there are 2 skills you must possess in order to be successful on this exam. And I'm probably the biggest nerd in this room. Well, you think, all right, I'll let that go. So listen, let me tell you this. For the last 18 years, my job has been to study both exams, study the people who take them and are successful, and to study the people who take these exams and are not successful. I feel like I'm in a pretty good place to tell you what it takes to be successful on this exam. I am convinced that there are 2 skills you must possess to be successful. The first one is going to be obvious to you. You must put the information in your brain. You got to put it in. You got to study. You cannot guess your way through this exam. But the second skill you must possess to be successful on this exam is the one that people always forget to do. You've got to practice pulling the information out of your brain. You have to be efficient at pulling this information out so that when you get to a question, you can pull it out and you can move to the next one. So how do you do that? You do it by working multiple choice questions. But as you work multiple choice questions, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get an imaginary clock in your head. I want the clock to go off every 60 seconds because I want you to spend 60 seconds per question. If 60 seconds has elapsed and you haven't arrived at an answer for this question, I want you to mark it as one you want to come back to, and I want you to move on to the next question. Whether you take AANP's exam or ANCC's exam, if you move through those questions at a 1 minute per question pace, you will easily get through all the questions with a chunk of time left over to go back and revisit the ones that need more of your attention. And some questions are going to just take longer than a minute. I'll just tell you right now. I'm moving the bar up on you today. Yesterday we went through lots of questions and I filled your brain with a lot of facts and I showed you how to look at things. But today I'm moving the bar up on you. Today you're going to have to look at more data in order to arrive at an answer to a question. Every question on the exam can't be like that. You would never finish it. But you're going to see questions on that exam that are higher level questions. They need more of your brain in order to be able to arrive at an answer. So I want you to have that clock in your head that goes off every 60 seconds because you need to be able to get through all those questions and then go back and revisit the ones that you want to think about some more. At this point, I know you know this, but it bears reminding you. Don't change answers to your questions, right? Don't change those answers. The only way you should change an answer to a question is if you look at the question and you say, oh, it said osteoporosis. I thought it was osteoarthritis. If you misread the question, you have permission to change the answer. Otherwise, don't change an answer. Your first impression is usually a good one. How else can you practice pulling out that information? Besides multiple choice questions, I really think you probably ought to make some flashcards with the things that you have trouble remembering. So I would write it down and I would flash it. Your ability to learn information comes from exposure to it. To be honest with you, maybe you need it twice and you got it. Sometimes people need it 7 times before they get it. So it's a matter of being exposed to the information and facts that you're having difficulty remembering. So I was never a flashcard person, but a lot of people are. And if that's how you learn, it's probably a good way to do it. That will also help you pull that information out. There's something else I want you to do. Before you sit down to take the exam, I want you to sit down and take at least 1 or maybe 2 or more practice exams. I've never read this in a book, but I know that it exists and you do too. It's something I call your fatigue factor. It's a point at which your brain needs a mental break. For people at your level, masters and doctorally prepared students, your brain needs a break about every 60 minutes or so. If you don't give your brain a break, it makes careless mistakes. You don't want to make any careless mistakes on this exam. You need to get the questions right that you are supposed to get right. There will be plenty of questions on this exam, are you ready, that you couldn't answer if you had the internet at your disposal. So you just prepare for them. You prepare when you read a question and you're like, oh my God. Do you have a strategy to answer those OMG questions? Here's your strategy. I threw it out to you yesterday. Let me tell you, statistically, you will get more questions right when you don't know the answer if you answer the same answer every time. So honest to goodness, this was my strategy. I've always been a pretty good multiple choice question taker. When I didn't know an answer to a question, I always chose A. My name is Amelie. It starts with an A. I picked A. If your name is Betty, maybe Betty picks B. I don't know. But if your name is Haley, you need just another strategy, right? So that's how I would approach those questions I don't know. But back to my fatigue factor. You need to find out where your brain needs a mental break. Yesterday, I watched the faces of everybody in this room, and I routinely do that. I go right down. As we started getting about 45 minutes, you might have seen me look at my watch. 45 minutes into yesterday morning, first section, I began to see the first people beep out on me. I watched you. I had a handful of people who hung with me for the entire 70 minutes. It doesn't matter when your brain needs its break. You need to know when that break is. Because as you take your exam, if you know your brain needs a break at 45 minutes into this exam, you need a 2-minute quick mental break. So when you get back at it, you're much less likely to make a careless mistake. All right, so I really think that that's important for you. To be successful on this exam, I think you need to have a good memory and a short memory. A good memory for obvious reasons. You got to have the material in, you got to be able to pull it out. But I want you to have a short memory as well. And here's what I mean. I told you that you would probably see questions on the exam that you couldn't answer if you had the internet at your disposal. I want you to look at them, give it your best shot, and let it go. Forget about it. Have a short memory. Go on. I want you to tell yourself, I don't have to get that question right to pass. They used to release scores. They used to tell you how many questions you got right out of how many. And I always knew it was around 2/3. I think that's probably still true. But I don't want to see you get 2 out of every 3 questions right. That's going to make me very tense. I would feel way more comfortable if you got 3 of every 4 correct. Because if you did that, I know you're going to get a big old P on this exam. A P, what is that? Pass, right? So I know you'll get it. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is you're going to see questions that you don't know the answer to. Don't you dare let that wreck your confidence. Don't you dare. Let it go and move on to the next question. All right? When do you get results? Right away. Okay, so this is going to be you. You will have answered all these questions. You've gone back to the ones you wanted to revisit. You realize there's nothing more I can do. You put your hand on the mouse. You move the pointer closer and closer to the button that says submit. You gaze toward heaven. You click submit. Submit means these are my answers, give me good news. The first screen that comes up might be one that says, do you want to take a survey? A survey? I want my results. I don't know if you have to take the survey or not. If you got to take the survey, you got to take the survey. But when the results come up on your computer screen, I want you to look at them. It's going to say preliminary results indicate you were successful on the whatever. I want you to look away, and I want you to look at it again. And so you'll get your results that day.